Hi everyone, and welcome to the Be Brave podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick trigger warning. This podcast will talk about child sexual abuse, trauma, and recovery. Please listen with care and kindness to yourself. If at any point you feel triggered, pause, take a break, and come back when you're ready. I'll share some helpline numbers at the end for anyone who needs support. And just so you know, throughout the series, we'll be using words like CSA, grooming, and other terms that might be difficult to hear. Please take care of yourself whilst listening. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Be Brave podcast. I am so glad you're with us today. Before we get started, I want to give a very important trigger warning. This episode will mention rape, suicide, intrafamilial abuse, grooming, medical abuse, torture, and punishment. Please take care whilst listening, and feel free to pause or step away at any time. The purpose of today's episode is to bring forward the often silenced experiences of male survivors, to challenge the societal myths, and to explore the lifelong impact of childhood sexual abuse. Today, I'm honoured to be joined by Tony. Tony, thank you so much for being here and for choosing to speak so openly with us today. Before we dive deeper, could you share a brief introduction about yourself and what has led you to speak publicly about your experiences?
Hello, I'm approaching 60. The stuff that happened to me was my early life and into my teens. And I have a desire to try and make a difference so that it's easier for men to come forward. It's not shameful. And that is my mission in life, is to try and make a difference there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very important to have male survivors on and be the voices for them, because they're so often silenced and feel like they can't speak up and come forward. And Tony, you said the words, "I choose to speak, I choose to make a difference," in your speech that you so gracefully shared with me. What made you decide that now is the right time to share your voice more publicly?
Now that I'm retired, you spend more time looking back at your life and what you've achieved and what you've gained. And I want to make a difference. I don't know what that difference looks like to some extent in my own mind, but I know I have to help. I'm a very empathetic person, and that empathy means I can't sit back on my laurels and expect others to make a fight, and I don't. So it's just something that I have to do. I stand by my morals.
Yeah. Well, you're incredibly brave for doing so. And when did you come forward, if you don't mind me asking? When was the moment that you decided to tell your story?
It took me the best part of 40 years to accept that I was even a victim. And it was 3 or 4 years ago when I went to the police that I decided I'm ready to be heard. So that was about 3 or 4 years ago was the answer.
So a long time that you were holding on to this.
Yeah, in denial. Yeah, in denial.
I want to take us back to your early childhood, if you feel safe and to do so, where so much of your story begins. And if you are okay, can you take the listeners back to where it all started?
It all started, I think I was probably 5, maybe 6 years of age. My mother would bathe me and my brother once a week, as was typical in the 70s, on a Sunday evening, together in the bath. And then she began fondling me and saying to a 6-year-old that you need to be hard to be a man.
God.
She didn't do it to my brother. It was just to me. And that became my reality of motherhood. It moved on from there to taking me to the kind of public toilets that you wouldn't send any child into, regardless of their age, but sending me in at the age of, again, maybe 6 or 7 now, to watch and learn. Consequently, I was touched and fondled by numerous perverts.
God. I just want to say how sorry I am that this happened to you. I know me saying how sorry I am does not change it. And I'm sure you've heard that from many people since you've come forward and told your story. But I can feel your pain. And yeah, the only word I can come up with is just sorry. Absolutely horrific.
Yeah. You don't, there's washing, but little boys don't need under their foreskin washing.
Yeah, no.
And to do that to a little boy, to try and make an orgasm, was painful, and I didn't like it. I remember standing up in the bath facing her. She'd be kneeling down, so of course she'd be eye level.
Mm-hmm.
Get my drift.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what it was. After we'd had our time playing with the suds on our hair and making a suddy beard and a suddy Mohican and all the normal things, by the time I was old enough, probably 9 or 10, old enough to have a bath on my own, I started locking the door, and that was the end of that.
When this was happening, where was your brother? Was he still in the bath?
Once I started, yes, he was still in the bath initially at age 5 and 6. Yeah.
Sorry, so he would be seeing this happening?
Yes, and nothing happened to him because he was well endowed, apparently. Even the nurses, she said, would come and have a look at how well endowed he was when he was born. And I was made to feel shame for not being as well endowed as a 6-year-old. So, yeah, by the time as I say, I don't know, I can't remember how old I was when I started having a bath on my own. I'm sure it was in my late primary school years, possibly even as I started secondary school at age 11, moving up to that age group. But I was obviously a very unhappy child and very distressed, and I had a few uncles in my life along the way before my stepdad came on the scene. Then a whole new level of trauma opened and began.
Yeah, I want to talk about your stepdad, but before I mention that, can you just help me understand, where was your dad? Was your dad not in the picture? So it was just you, your brother, and your mum until your stepdad came into the picture?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how old were you when your stepdad came into the picture?
I remember having my 6th birthday and him saying on my 6th birthday, we have a year to sort him out. Show me the boy of 7 and I will show you the man. So that is a very distinct phrase of 1 year. So I was 6 and he was already comfortable by that time to say to the mother of this boy, we have a year to sort him out.
Obviously, we cannot understand the minds of these people, but what does that even mean? Sort him out? You were 6. What?
I was a very shy and timid, probably because of what was happening to me. And I'd lost my dad. I didn't know where my real dad was, etc. We'd ran away during the night one time. But my stepdad thought I was tied to my mother's apron strings. That's an old saying. I feel like a fella in America. That's an old saying. Not many people know that word. So, I was very shy. My brother was 2 years younger than me. So he was witnessing this at 2 years younger. And he was up front and outgoing and bubbly, and he'd be the one to lead me astray. Let's do this. And I'd be like, and then do it. So it was just being whatever 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds do at being naughty. It's not going to be that serious, but it was the beginning of getting the slipper, the ruler, and physical punishment.
Was the physical punishment just from your stepdad, or was your mum physical?
No, my mum was physical as well. Not so much so in the early days. In those early days, at some level, she tried to protect me, which only wound him up more. And then she gave in to his demands that he was making a man of me and making me strong. And she came along with that thought process. And so the physical abuse and the psychological abuse went hand in hand. So from those early years, along with the physical abuse, was the saying, "You'll be no use to man, woman, or child." That echoes today. I fight that today.
Yeah.
Now, sitting here doing this podcast with you, that echoes today.
Well, it lives in you, doesn't it? If you've been told that amount of times, it's something that is embedded in us, and our brains are rewired to believe that. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of healing and a lot of therapy to process it, understand it, and for it to get better. So
it has to be in a de-brainwashed or unbrainwashed, because in effect that is what was happening.
Yeah. No, it is. It is a type of brainwashing, 100%. And when you're so young, our brain,
what it is.
Yeah, we believe it as well, don't we?
Yeah.
It's if you're being told by an adult that is what it is, then you're going to believe it.
And then, school reports twice a year or whatever they were. Could try harder. No, I couldn't, actually. My life was consumed by what was happening to me. I couldn't try any harder than I did. I was a daydreamer, of course I was. Neurodiverse, looking out the windows, etc. And then being asked the question, not having a clue what's going on in the classroom. But I had so much else to think about.
You weren't able to think of anything else because that was consuming you.
Yeah.
And I think also as children, you don't understand, you haven't got the cognitive ability or the cognitive skills to understand that. We obviously understand that now, but when you're a child, you don't understand why it's consuming you or why you're looking out the window and thinking about all these things and why it's going on and why it's you. And you just don't have that. So
no, you don't. I just wanted to be outside in the playground.
Yeah.
Moved school a lot. I was at 3 different primary schools. So I never had a stable friendship. A friend's house that you could go to. I had other parents that I could go to that would see this unhappy child. That wasn't there for me. So I was very isolated. And I was in 2 different secondary schools then. And I always felt I was the new boy. And I've written a song about it. I've taught myself guitar over the years, and I write poetry, music, etc. I think you've even heard me play.
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not brilliant, but I think I'm Eric Clapton, so that's all that matters.
Absolutely. Well, it's also the music is an outlet as well, and it's a real therapy as well. So if it helps you, then that's great. When you sort of mentioned neurodiversity, I just wanted to touch on that because I find it very interesting as I'm neurodiverse as well. And I'm pretty sure the reason that I was targeted at such a young age, because I was very tiny and very small and very vulnerable, but I also had very severe neurodiverse needs. And I think that came across, and I'm just interested to see, you've described being autistic and having neurodiverse needs and still learning those basic things at the time. And obviously this was back when, in the 70s, you said?
Yeah, in the 70s.
Well, neurodiverse was not even a thing back then.
No.
And
even the word autism, I remember it being passed around in the late 80s, early 90s as this new reason that the lad who could draw pictures, but he drew them backwards. I think he was one of the very first that I remember seeing on the TV. And, that these special skills that we might have. And I've always been artistic. I doodle. I've been drawing this morning while I was waiting for us to start recording. And it's a way of me understanding my life. And I like to try and capture in abstract images now what life means.
How do you think that you were neurodiverse at that time? They didn't obviously realize, but do you think that had an impact with the interaction of the abuse that you endured and the judgment that you were facing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very poor at maths. Maths is like dyscalculia, I think
Yeah.
it's called. So we understand people who are dyslexic and letters bounce around on a piece of paper, etc. For me, it's like that with numbers. I can't 2 and 2 at the age of 6. It just made no sense to me. And if you start getting into 3 and 5 or 7 and 8, I've not got a clue. And I was learning to read at age 7, and I was reading the Ladybird Peter and Jane books.
Oh, yeah.
This is Peter, that was on one page. This is Jane, that was on the next page. Very, very simple. This is Spot the dog. I was reading that at age 7. And they used to say, both of them at this point now would be saying to me, I can't believe you can't get this. I can't believe you. Are you stupid? Are you thick? Why can you not remember what you did in class? I think a lot of parents ask their children, so what did you learn today? I dreaded that question. I couldn't tell you what I'd learned today. I didn't have a clue. Not a clue. And those early days, those early years, that lack of understanding of how to interact with people was very much a instigator of the abuse, because it was seen as the dumps of the class, standing in the corner with the white hat on, cone on my head. So yeah, that was used to propel their installation of making me a better person.
Yeah.
Try and beat it out of you.
Yeah. God, it's just want to go back and slap them, because it's not going to work at all. It's funny. I had another call this morning, and as obviously I'm doing quite a lot of episodes with lots of different survivors, and one thing that I am noticing, and it's not related to it is kind of related to what you just said, but the parallels between everyone's stories are obviously incredibly different, and everyone's experiences are very different, but the parallels of what happens after, or what's happening at the time, and how we dealt with it are so on par, and it's really incredible to see. And I just sort of mentioned I was very neurodiverse. Well, I still am very neurodiverse, but when I was 7 and 8, I was at a school, and I can't do maths either. Cannot understand it still to this day. Do not understand it. Never could wrap my head around it. But I've struggled with writing and reading as well. And I remember this one time, my teacher, and I can still see her, she was so old-fashioned. And this was back in the early 90s. And we were doing a spelling test, and I got every single spelling wrong. And they were, I must have been in year 2 maybe. And it was spellings like run and there and them and things like that. And I got every single one wrong. And we had to pass the books to the next person that was sitting next to us. And mine came back at X, cross, 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 cross. And my teacher came up to me, and she dragged me up to the front of the class in front of everyone, tore up my book, threw it in the bin, and pointed at me and said, "You're so stupid, get out of my class." And I remember that even now to this day. And I still have that embedded in me, where I think, well, I'm just so stupid. I'm stupid. I'm thick, and that embedded in me from such a young age. I then took that throughout my whole schooling, and I just thought, well, what's the point? Because I'm stupid and I can't get it, and I'm thick, and I'm never going to understand this. And those sort of things, they stick with you. And it was only until my parents went in and obviously said, "What the hell, you cannot do that," and they moved me to a different school. But when you have adults telling you that you're stupid and you need to beat it out of you, or tearing up a book in front of your whole class and throwing you out of the class and telling you that you'll never be anything and you're stupid and you're this, that, and the other, you believe it. You are going to believe it, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. You've nothing to base it on unless you've got a good family around you that would say that you had the confidence to say at home that this has happened today. But I didn't have that home to go to.
Just awful. And again, I'm going to say it probably many times during this call, but again, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And and I'm sure people that are listening are feeling exactly the same way. So just sort of move on. I kind of want to go on to your coming out of into your teenage years. So, at a young age, you were already carrying fear, confusion, isolation that we've just spoken about, and things escalated as you grew older. So if we move on into your teen years where you faced a new set of dangers whilst trying to survive, and you mentioned in your speech that you sent me, you began to run away, and because, your home no longer felt safe or that you could survive. So what did these moments of escape mean to you and running away mean to you?
Running away was an act of survival. I was bullied at school because I'd been to so many schools. And obviously the neurodiversity, not being able to communicate and all that sort of stuff going on. So school was a nightmare. We'd moved out to the country at this point. Obviously, I don't want to say whereabouts, but we'd moved out to the country, and there was a school bus that picked us up, all the country kids, and I was the third last to get on, which means the school bus was already full, and there was nowhere to sit, and I'd stand at the front, and then all the cheering and jibes would begin, and then getting off the school bus and I'd be pushed and, try to be tripped up and all that sort of stuff. So school was a nightmare and I hated it. And I started truanting, and if it was raining, I'd go to school. If it was dry, I'd take myself off. And the easiest way to get about out in the country in the 70s and early 80s was to hitchhike, to thumb a lift. So that's what I did. And one day, I was outside school, actually, across the road, just down a little bit, so I couldn't be seen by any of the staff, and stuck my thumb out, and a car picked me up, and I went to the city. And it felt cathartic, that initial, oh my God, I can breathe. But then the fear kicks in. It's okay, it's only 12 o'clock. They won't know until 4 that I'm done. 4:30, whatever time I got in from school. So I've got all day to get as far away from school, as far away from home as I can. And that's what I did. And I travelled over 100 miles as a 13-year-old with nothing but maybe 20 or 30p in my pocket and a packet of 10 fags or something that I'd started smoking so that I wouldn't get bullied. And then I'm in the middle of a city. Now what? And every policeman that walked past thinking, oh my God, they're going to know. There's like a red light on my head that says, run away, take him home. So every policeman I saw, I turned into a shop or in a doorway or turned my back or what's this young kid doing out and not in school at this time of the day? And then as the evening wore on, 6 o'clock, I'm thinking, my stepdad's going to be getting in from work. She's going to be telling him that I haven't got home yet. At what point will they start worrying for me? Where will they go? What will they do? And I had to stop thinking about them and think about how I was going to get through the rest of the night. How, at 13 years of age, am I going to stay safe tonight in a city that I don't know and have never been to before? And I found a park and sat on the bench, and as it came dark, I worked my way into some deep undergrowth and made a bed of leaves and twigs and the stuff that me and my brother used to do when we were kids, when we were little, when we were playing out, making dens. And I made somewhat of a den, and all I had was a denim jacket. That was my only coat. So I'd have a shirt on and a denim jacket. The school that I went to didn't require The secondary school didn't require a uniform. So I was in jeans, double denim, a shirt and a denim jacket, and that was it. That was my clothing to get me through the night, and taking my denim jacket off and having it over my upper body, then moving it down across my legs. And after 10 minutes, moving it back over my shoulders, and every 10 minutes alternating to keep me warm. Scared to light up a fag in case somebody would see the glow. And the nights are so cold and so long and so lonely and so frightening. And the worst part then was the next day thinking, I don't know how I did that, but now if I go home, they'll know that I'm hurting. And they'll say, oh my God, we're sorry, we didn't realise. And I remember walking up the lane to the house, and they were building a new house. They bought a derelict cottage and they were building a new house. And me and my brother lived in the derelict cottage. You wouldn't keep your dog in there, to be honest. There was mushrooms and blues green mould on our bedroom wall. No wallpaper, it was just painted. And it was that damp. Blue tack didn't work, so we couldn't put our posters up. And thinking, they're going to have a banner waiting for me saying, welcome home, Tony. I can visualize it today. Welcome home. And I'd go in and they'd sweep me up in their arms, or my mum would, and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And when I got in, she battered the life out of me. Then he got in from work. I'd been sent to my room, and I got the belt. Not for the first time. Got the belt at about age 11. I was 13 now. And I'm not talking just half a dozen strikes on the hand. I'm talking, I was left with welt. I couldn't lie down on my bed. I'm curled in a ball on the floor, and the belt is raining and slashing, and I can hear that. I can't even take my own belt off now, because when you take it off fast, it clicks through the loops. Mm-hmm. I can't do that. That's an effect from 13, when I was 13. I can't take my own belt off. The hairs on the back of my neck, on what hair I have left, are standing up. I've just got, because I'm trying to paint that picture. And it's so visual and real to me that I can feel it now, of being that 13-year-old boy curled up against an old unit and the detritus of life that was, it was just where all the junk was put in the house, and curled up on the floor, cold flagstones, and the belt just not stopping. I'm screaming in the snot, and I've wet myself, and I'm screaming for my mum, and she comes in, sees that what's happening, turns round and walks away. And I know that this is my life now. This is what I get for running away. But it didn't stop me from running away. It made me run away again, because there's no way I'm going through that again. So a couple of weeks later, when I'm better, because that's how long it took to heal, and I've been to school for a few times, and my face has been seen around town, and teachers have seen me. And every day I was in trouble for something. During these periods of healing, I was isolated. My brother wasn't allowed to be in the bedroom with me, so he'd have to be in the living room, and I'm out in this derelict cottage. Half the wall was taken away, so the internal wall was an external wall. So, it's only what it really was like living in a shed. And starvation is used. I don't like using the term mother or father or stepdad or mum. I don't like using those terms. So she would come out to me and give out to me and swear at me and maybe slap me across the face because I'd run away, because I didn't think about her, what she was going through, why I had been away. Mashed potato is all she would give me. And sometimes she would say, I've done your mashed potato, and then she'd scrape it on the bedroom floor and the dog would eat it. and I just curled up on my bunk bed, top bunk, because I was the oldest, and cried and waited for my brother to come be sent to bed at 9 o'clock or whatever, and him trying to comfort me. And that went on then until I was 14. By the time I was 14 and a half, I'd run away from home 20 times, give or take. And the beatings got to the extent where I feared for my life. I was one beating away from being murdered. We lived out in the country, and I knew, even then, I knew they had never reported me to the police. I found that out 4 or 5 years ago when I went to the police, and there was no recordings of me being missing. And the longest period I was away for was a week at age 14, coming around the country. And it was horrific. I had to fight and live on my wits, and literally fight at times to not get beaten up or attacked or whatever. But do you remember the Sarah Sharif case from last year?
Yes.
This time last year, and it came out what her dad had done to her. At the time, last year, I was saying, I am her that has survived to tell what she's going through. That's how bad it was. I'm a baby P that lived to tell the tale. And I'm proud that I have lived. I've made over the last 40 years. Suicide ideation has always been there. I've come to a stage now, though, that I've got too many miles on the clock to exit early. So that's not there anymore. But I self-harm by punching walls, and every bone in my right hand and wrist has been broken from punching walls. I would never punch anybody else. I couldn't punch somebody else, and because I know what it feels like. So whenever, even an argument between me and my wife, up until recently, 12 months, 18 months, would result in breaking a bone in my fist because I've done something wrong that I perceive to be wrong.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff that I was beaten for as a child, I now beat myself up for as an adult.
It's a lot to hear.
It's a lot to hear.
It's a lot to hear.
Yeah.
It's a lot to hear and it's a lot to take in, but I didn't live it, so...
Nobody knew what was going on in the bathroom, and I never disclosed that until I went to the police. I was too ashamed. I disclosed my physical abuse because I ended up in foster care because of it. Everybody at school, the one or two good friends that I had, knew. I used to wear my stripes across my back as a badge of honor, almost. And my best friend's mother would say, "We've not seen you around for a while, Tony. Can you take off your shirt?" And I'd take off my shirt, and I'd remember I said, "Oh dear God, what has he done to you?" That it was my stripes. I was like a tiger. So life was hard. And in the interim, there's still sexual abuse going on.
So was that going on as well as the physical abuse?
Yeah.
That hadn't stopped?
No.
That was just by your mum?
So by this time, obviously I'm 13, so, you know, she's not going to be in the bathroom with me, but she was still, I'd go into town shopping with her, for example, on a Saturday, 'cause I didn't want to be home alone with him. Christ knows where it happened. So we'd go shopping together as a family, me and my brother, and as soon as we'd park up, there'd be some public toilets, and she'd say, "All right, come on, off you go and watch and learn." And at this point, I'm 13, and it's second nature. I know I'm going to be touched. I know I'm going to see erect men, old men generally, and then my appendix happened.
Okay, so you mentioned about your appendix in your speech.
In hospital.
Yeah. I was gonna move on to...
Yeah, I know. I was sort of dropping the hint for you there.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I didn't want to stop you because your story it's so important to tell, and it's incredibly raw and it's very hard to hear. but that's just, it's harder for you to tell it and to live it. So I want you to have this space to tell and to be as open and honest. And I didn't want to interrupt you at all then.
Okay.
So, but I think it's a nice time for us to, well, not a nice, that's the wrong word.
Yeah.
It's not nice at all, but it's the right time to potentially move on to the hospital abuse that you have mentioned in your speech as well. So you have spoken about the devastating layer of abuse that happened in a place that's meant to care for you, which is the hospital. And you mentioned you had your appendix removed. And in the time in hospital, you were then groomed and raped by a porter. How long were you in the hospital for? And how do you make sense of what happened to you in the hospital as an adult now?
So by this time, I got into the habit of thumbing a lift rather than catching the bus. And I had been touched up and sexually abused by probably 1 in 10 hitchhiking lifts. And then one Sunday afternoon, me and my brother were at a friend's house, not a close friend, a friend of the family's. And we were just playing around the house when suddenly I got an overwhelming pain. I was vomiting, and this friend's mother took me to the hospital, and I was kept in. She didn't wait with me. And later on that evening, my mother turned up to see me. I was already in the hospital bed in a small little rural hospital. There was only one other boy on the ward with me. There was no nurse's station. As I say, it was rural. And she said, "Oh dear, what's happened? Blah, blah, blah. I've spoke to the nurses and you'll be having your appendix out sometime this week. I'll come and see you later on in the week." So during visiting hours that night, she'd already been and gone, because as soon as she found out I was in hospital, she came to see me. The other boy's mother looking over at me and noticing that I was on my own and sort of saying hello, and, I was very unwell, so I was not paying much attention. 2 days in, well, from that first Sunday night until 2 days later when I had the operation, a porter, who I've named Jimmy for obvious sort of reasons.
Yeah.
I can't remember his real name, but to me, he is Jimmy the porter. He brought me a pack of cards at first and gave me a cheeky little cigarette, and he was really nice. And he'd sit down beside and talk to me and say, "Well, where's your mother? Yeah, she should be here. You shouldn't be on your own." And I was getting all this, and I felt so wanted and cared for. And he took me in and adjusted my pillows and all this sort of stuff. And on the day of the operation, he did the pre-op, which involved shaving me. And I'm not talking about my chin, because I didn't have anything on my chin. And we ended up with me being naked and him telling me to be careful. I don't want to end up as Jewish. I had no idea what that meant. And he's shaving my belly and between my legs, and telling me to keep still. And then he asked me to get out of the bed. And he's telling me all the time, as he's touching me and moving me and taking off my operation gown, that he's a member of the hospital team. He has to make sure I'm clean, no germs. And he asks me to bend over the bed once, naked, and something went inside me. And the whole time he's talking, telling me that the shaving foam was special, medicinal shaving foam, that it would make me hard, and that's normal. It's nothing to be afraid of or scared of or be embarrassed about. And that was that. One of the nurses came and said, "Jimmy, are you okay in there? You nearly done?" Yeah, won't be a minute. You've just been a bit embarrassed. Okay. So he was that confident. He was that confident that he could carry on touching me with a nurse the other side of the curtain, knowing that she wasn't looking. And I mentioned the other boy at the beginning because he warned me. And this is something that I have and having great in-depth therapy about, that I feel to blame because I didn't say no. I didn't ask him to stop. And my therapist just telling me I was already sexualized because I saw what he was doing to me as love, because that's what I'd been told. And how would I have said no? I didn't have the words. I didn't have the vocabulary to say no, stop. And I carry the shame, but he should carry the shame.
God, absolutely.
But I'm in deep therapy at the moment. Yesterday was my last session before of the year, before the new year comes back over, and we're just really struggling to break that core belief that the shame is not mine. And after the operation, the day after the operation, I should say, my mother came to see me. She said there was no point coming in the day of the operation because I'd be under the influence of anaesthetic and sleepy, and it's a long drive, so what would be the point? And obviously after the anaesthetic, I was very weepy and upset and about what had happened to me just before theatre. As I woke up, Jimmy's got his hand under the blanket, and I've had my appendix removed. I've got a big bloody plaster over me, and he's still fondling me. And it continued every single day. I don't think he took a day off. I think he knew he was like unaware. He fondled me every single day for the next fortnight that I was in hospital. Back in those days, you'd stay in hospital for a fortnight for a major surgery such as an appendectomy. Consequently, I was sent home. I was home for about 3 or 4 days. When it became infected, I was told it was septicemia. By the time I got back to the hospital, so there had to be an emergency operation to clean the wound, which they did with me awake. And I again had the hairs are standing on the back of my neck. I remember lying on the theatre bed, this black bed, and gripping the sides of it, and the nurse being told to hold me down, screaming as he takes a scalpel to this wound that is infected. And Jimmy's to the side with a wheelchair. It only takes a few minutes. And they said, right, you can get up now. And I'm trying to get up off the bed. No local, no general, nothing. And I'm slipping off the bed, and Jimmy's there with the wheelchair, captures me and takes me back to the ward, tucks me in and lingers and has a fondle and a fiddle to make me feel better. And the next time I see my mother is when she comes to pick me up in a few days later. And for years, I thought I was gay because your body reacts. And I could remember seeing the top of his head on my belly, and he'd be about 60, 65, something like that. Greasy hair, going bald, black stained trousers. I never saw him. He never revealed himself to me. Then, before I was about to be released, he said to me, he was talking to me, and he was saying, come and stay with me. I've got a spare room at my house. You can come and stay with me at the weekends. We'll have a great time. I'll take you for your first pint, and the lads would love to meet you. And I'm thinking, there is no way on earth will this guy ever see me once I get out of this place. So he said, ask your mum. So when she came in, I sort of said, I did what I was told. That's, part of autism, I suppose. I've been told to ask this question, so I asked that question. I still do it now, and land myself in a lot of hot water.
Yeah.
So I said, the porter said, wants to know if I can stay at his place at the weekends. And after umming and ahhing and initially going, you cannot, she then came round to the idea, and she said, well, I'll need to meet him first. And he was hanging round in the doorway, and the doorway to the ward. It was like a room rather than what you might envisage as a ward today.
Yeah.
It was a room. It was a Victorian or Edwardian building, so it was a room, and he stood in the doorway watching. And he kept skipping across the floor, little fella, skipping across the floor, delighted. And he's like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And he mentions a name, and, "Oh, God, you're a good-looking woman, blah, blah, blah." And so he asks, and she says, "Well, he's got a Saturday afternoon job. Obviously, he's still at school. So long as he still goes to his job and you drop him off, pick him up, and drop him off for school on Monday, I can't see any problems with that." And he was rubbing his hands.
I'm sure he was.
I can still feel his cold hands touching me now. When I got out, I've never clapped eyes on him since. There was another occasion when we first moved to the country. As I said, it was now habit to thumb a lift rather than even... There was no local buses because we were that remote. There were no local buses. So you either had a bike, walked, got somebody to drop you off, or I didn't have a bike and walking was too far. The nearest house was a mile away. The village was 2.5 miles. Everything was a distance. So I was thumbing a lift, and this old farmer had picked me up and said, "Do you fancy a drink?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." And we went into this local country pub. Doesn't exist anymore. It's long been pulled down. All the farmers used to use it. And he bought me a drink, and there was an outside toilet for men. It didn't even have a roof. It was literally a brick shithouse. So it lived up to its name. And he'd got me half a pint of bitter or something, lager, can't remember. And I knew what was coming. I knew what was going to happen. And I said, "I'm just going for a wee." I went out and I legged it. I ran across the fields. I ran walls, gardens, fields, all the way back home, and told my mother. And it was more of a test for her. And I told her that this old fella had picked me up as I was coming back from town, and he touched me on my leg, and he'd taken me for a drink of alcohol, and I was scared of what was going to happen. And she said, "Do you touch you anywhere else?" I said, he was moving on to that yet. She said, "Oh, don't worry about it. He was probably just a lonely old farmer." So that was that. I knew I had nobody to talk to. I had no answers. I had nothing. And I'm estranged from them now. I've been estranged from them for 10 years. And just as they did as a child when they didn't report me missing, they have never tried to be in contact over the last 10 years. He's died. Yeah. Family, all the family that I grew up with, cousins, all that. My half-sisters by him. Every single person denies what happened to me.
Jesus.
And yet every single person at school, in the neighbourhood, knew what was happening to me. Because after all, I ended up in foster care. I've got my social worker records. It's documented what happened to me. And yet when the police went round, everybody, bar none, I even remembered my social worker's name. They contacted her. Every single person said, "We don't want to get involved. We don't want to." Not, "I'm lying." Not, "What is he talking about?" We don't want to get involved.
They don't want to be part of it, do they? They don't want to believe that it's happening. That's the thing.
And I've carried it with me my whole life, and I still carry it with me, that nobody cares enough. We see all the red tops, newspaper, the media screaming about poor little Sarah Sharif. What about the neighbours? Nobody intervened. And this is what drives me. This is what makes me make this podcast with you today. Because everybody looked away when it was me, and I can't look away. People need to hear my story because it is horrific. It's horrific. on every level, of every scale that you could imagine. Not just the sexual abuse, not just the it's all right, but to the violence that I live with, to the fact that I thought I was one beating away from being murdered. They could bury, because I was a runaway and I'd never been reported, if I was never seen again in that village, they could have got away with murder. That's what I live with.
And it's the fact that no one wanted to stick up for you and come forward, even though they knew it was all happening. And then you mentioned, it still happens with Sarah. It still happens, but these people, they do know it's happening, but they don't want to get involved. They don't want it to affect their lives. But if it's one person can speak up, the whole thing would have been different. And I want to, I don't know, I can't do it, but when I hear these stories, especially yours, but everyone that I've heard, all I want to do is I want to go back to when they were a child and just give them a hug and just be like, I wish I could save you. I wish I could be there. And I do it with myself as well. I look at little Chloe and I think, I wish I could have been the one that saved you, because no one else was there and no one else was saving us. And it really, it really gets me. And and I'm just so sorry that it happened to you and you've been through so much. But the fact that you want to share your story, and it's so incredibly brave and powerful, and I'm honoured to have you on this podcast, because I think it's so important that people will listen to this, and it is incredibly raw story. But I'm hoping that it will help other people to not feel like they're alone, but also for other people that are listening, that the allies that are out there that are listening, to think, wow, it happens and it is still happening right under our noses. And to speak up and to not be afraid to speak up. Even if you might get it wrong, it doesn't matter. Because I think there's an element of that. People are worried that if they say something and if it's not true, they're going to get in trouble. But you won't,
No.
But if you don't say anything, that is when that little child is going to be in trouble.
Yeah. I would never, ever accuse anybody of this, ever, if it wasn't true, particularly of the sexual abuse. I would never accuse her that. My stepdad never, ever touched me sexually, ever. My mother did. And then I found out after 40 plus years, I found my real dad, and the man that I'd always put on a pedestal, the man who would come back and save me somehow, who didn't know where I was, but according to my mother, could have easily found us. But I found him through Facebook. And 18 days later, he died. And I was absolutely devastated. But through that, I found a brother and a sister who I remember the names anyway, but I had no real recollection of them. And my now elder brother, I said to him, I have a vague recollection that I've met you as a child. I said, how often did we meet? He went, every week. Wow. And I cried my heart out because I didn't remember it. But he's older than me, so he remembered me. And he remembers my mother instigating the incest to his sister when she came on my father's scene. My mother is a paedophile. What does that make me? I am not that. He has been to prison on numerous occasions. She assisted his incest. It started when she turned up. It ended when she left with me and my younger brother. And that is the circle of my life. That's what runs through my life. That put me in hospital. And I defy anybody not to end up in hospital. Not only being the victim, but finding out that both of your parents get their kick this way.
I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how you come to terms with that. And
I don't know if I have.
But yeah, no, whether you haven't, I don't think you can ever, because we can't understand them. And I don't think we ever will. And one thing that I battled with, and I still battle with, is the why. Why are you like that? Why was he like that? Why did he do that? But my therapist always says to me, you can't understand a paedophile because you aren't one. And if you could understand, you'd be very different. So I think I can't even, like I said, I can't even begin to understand how you have.
No, you can't get your head around it.
No.
It's not possible to get your head around it. But somehow I have used the words that I was told as a child to be no use to man, woman, or child, enforced with violence, to push me forward, to seek their love and approval. I pretty much left school at 13. I got in touch with the school and said, I know I'm going back to like the late 70s, but can you tell me what my attendance was, or, what documentation, what have you got on your records about me? So all we can find is your attendance, 52%, 50%. So like I said, when it was raining, I was at school. When it wasn't, I was coming off a lift somewhere, just being on my own. And isolation now is how I heal. I need to be on my own, and it breaks my wife's heart that she can't show me love and affection when it's the one thing I need.
Yeah.
But I've always had to deal with it on my own, and that is what I need. So now I have used those words to push me forward, but I now have a master's degree with distinction.
Incredible.
I've got a wall of 10 certificates, postgrad certificates on my wall. I then played rugby union and I loved it. And I became a bouncer. I was there at night time when you get the rowdy straight lads trying to look for a fight with the picking on gays, as I'm sure everybody who is gay will understand that. But this is a safe place for them. And I am happy to protect anybody. And I became a bouncer. Nobody ever will abuse me again, physically or mentally, in any way. And that has become my strength. Those negative words to put into a child's head, I've used to my advantage.
You are really an inspiration, and I feel incredibly emotional and just in awe of you. I really do.
Thank you. I've never become an alcoholic. I've done a bit of cannabis, and very few people haven't. I smoked and gave up, and I've never done the harder drugs in cannabis. And I live in a beautiful 4-deck detached house in a semi-rural area, and we're 18 months left on the mortgage. And the properties in this area are going for about 400,000. And that is this isn't my legacy. What I've achieved is not my legacy. My legacy is fighting for little Tommys. That's my legacy. That has to be my legacy. I can't have children. My wife and I went through a failed IVF 15 years ago. And it has taken both of us a lot to come to terms with that. And coupled with my background, I believe I would have been a good dad. I believe I would have shown care and affection and empathy, and I so much wanted to be a dad, but it wasn't to be. So my legacy has to be making sure that other boys, the laws are already there to protect children. I fell through the net. Nothing could have been done to protect me as a child because they were the pinnacle of the community. People looked up to them. They were smart, intelligent, hardworking. They never suspected. Nobody suspected. Well, they all knew, but it was part of the period of the late 70s. You give a kid a slap. Yeah, people saying it never do me any harm. A slap didn't do me much harm either. But being murdered did, or attempted murder. Obviously, I'm still here. So nothing would have protected me as a child. what needs to change now for men, myself included, to shake off the shackles of shame. It is not our fault. It is not our fault. What is the normal response to what I've been through? Is having a drink on a Friday, 3 or 4 pints, 10 pints. Is that the normal response to what I've been through? Is living in a drug den with a needle sticking out your arm. Is that the normal response? What is normal? Don't judge me on how I'm dealing with this.
Yeah.
I am doing the very best I can. And you know what I do in my spare time. You know the fight that I'm doing. And I won't stop that fight because my legacy has to mean something. I have no children. My bloodline ends here, probably just as well with what it is. But my wife's bloodline ends. Her brother died a few years back. Her parents have no grandchildren. And they would have been perfect grandparents. So what do I have to leave? I can only do good now, because doing bad, I've had enough. I've seen bad. When a child tells you they're scared of the monsters, listen to them, because monsters are real. You know that, and I know that.
I mean, Tony, I'm just conscious we have to probably wrap up, but I just wanted to say, you know, with everything that you have been through, being diagnosed with complex PTSD, open up about, and in your speech about your night terrors, your anger, your suicidal thoughts and self-harm, and the long wait lists that you've been on, and the services not designed for male survivors, and the therapy that wasn't a fit for you, and everything that you've been through, as with all the story that you've told us, and everything, the progress since, despite everything, despite all of those challenges that you've been through and all of that harm, you have built a life filled with achievements that completely rejects the narrative you were given as a child. And for that, I really am in awe of you. And I think you have left a legacy. You have left something. You are speaking up for all of those children, boys, girls, everyone that has been through what you have been through or similar. And to be here today and to tell your story in such depth and such detail with the most, it was so raw, and you spoke so eloquently and articulately. And I am so honoured for you to be on this podcast with me today, and for you to tell me your story, and for the listeners to be listening. As we come to an end, because I mean, I could talk to you all afternoon, Tony, I really could. I want to come to an end of this episode. But before we do, I want to ask you one final question. And that question is, if you could speak directly to other male survivors listening now, what would you want them to hear?
This is my fight now. We can't help children. This is going to happen to children. What goes on behind closed doors? It's very little. The laws are already there. All we can do is help us surviving this. And to every man out there, be brave and go and seek help. Tell them what you need. You need to be heard. Contact me through this podcast if you want, and I will listen to you. That's my message. Be heard. Be brave.
And your voice matters, I think. You know.
Your voice matters. Absolutely matters, because nothing will change until men start coming forward. That's why there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Because men don't come forward. We don't go to the doctors when we've got prostate problems or this, that, or the other. We shrug it off. This isn't manly. Well, being manly is standing up to the next man beside you. So stand up. I'm starting an army, and I'm leading it. So come and join my army. I'll lead.
Tony, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for your courage, your honesty, and for the strength it takes to sit with these memories and speak them into the world, because I know all too well that when you start talking about your experiences, you know, you are living it right this minute, right now. I can feel it from you. I'm feeling it. So please take care of yourself this afternoon. self-care is incredibly important after something like this. I know that you have your wife, and I'm glad that you have people around you that support you. So please take care of yourself. But thank you so much. Your voice will help people listening today more than you know. I really believe that. I really, really believe that.
Thank you. I hope this gets out to millions.
I hope so too.
One last thing. I've written my book. I'm writing my stories. I have not just a trilogy, I have a decade-a-thon of books, of stories, and they will be published.
Amazing. Please let me know when they are, and I can share them and get them out into the world, because your story matters. You matter. You are incredible. Honestly, I am in awe, and I am so honoured to have spoken to you today. And yeah, please take care of yourself. I hope to speak to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you.
Lovely to talk to you. Bye-bye, Chloe. Bye-bye. And thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Tony. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Be Brave Project. If anything we spoke about today has affected you, please remember this: you are not alone, and you deserve support. There are people and organisations ready to listen, to believe you, and to help you through whatever you're facing. Support is available, and you'll find the helpline numbers just below. Please take care of yourself, be gentle with your heart, and remember, being brave doesn't mean being unafraid. It means choosing to keep going. And I'm so proud of you being here. Until next time.